Nora?
Welcome, comadres and friends. I'm Dr. Nora de Hoyos Comstock, the national and international founder of Las Comadres para las Americas. The leadership team and I are pleased to have you join us for tonight's teleconference. You know, we're celebrating our Sweet 16. It has been a privilege to support Latino authors throughout these 16 years, and we look forward to many years to come. We'd like to extend a warm welcome to readers following us on our live Twitter chat at Read Latino Lit. Tonight, please help us welcome authors Gabriela Romero Lacruz and John Manuel Arias. Their interviews will begin shortly. But before we get started, just a few housekeeping rules. Keep yourselves on mute. We are taping. So keep yourselves on mute, and you can keep your video on. But just because we've pinned the speaker does not mean that anyone looking at you on gallery won't be able to see everything you're doing. So just remember that. We suggest you put yourself on speaker mode, but again, gallery works as well. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat and we will try to get to them. So first, let's start with our book club history. Comadre Maria? Me. Comadre Maria, you're on mute.
I do this all the time, don't I? Sorry. I'm sorry. Hang on.
That's okay. It breaks the ice, Comadre. We're good.
Good evening. I am Maria Ferrer, Executive Director of Las Comadres and Friends National Book Club. I can never find the unmute button, but I'm here. Our first book club gathering was in July 2004 in New York City. After a hiatus, Nora Comstock re-envisioned and relaunched the book club nationwide to promote the work of Latino authors to every book lover, to bring our community to bookstores and to support our writers. We started these teleconferences in October 2006. We are in our 16th year of sharing works by Latino authors with all of you. We created the teleconferences and the book club to entice everyone to read more Latino authors, to learn about Latino roots and the different perspectives on the Latino culture and heritage. Our book club and teleconferences are open to all, not just Latinos. We are creating a space for everyone to explore the Latino writer's mind and soul as portrayed through the written word. We encourage you to join our local book club in your city or time zone. We have 12 book clubs in 12 cities. There is sure to be one in your neighborhood or at least one that fits into your schedule. And if your city doesn't have one, why not help us start one? For more information about our book club, visit our website, latinolit.com. So please invite others to join us. Comadre Karen, take it away.
Welcome. Welcome, comadres and friends, to our November 2023 Zoom teleconference. I'm Karen Gonzalez, Assistant Coordinator for the Las Comadres and Friends Book Club, Denver Comadres Book Club Facilitator, and co-founder of the Colorado Alliance of Latino Mentors and Authors. Thank you for joining us tonight. We begin our interviews with Gabriela Romero Lacruz, an author and illustrator born and raised in Venezuela. Gabriela graduated with a BS in Chemical Engineering from the University of Houston and later launched The Moonborn, a clothing, accessories, and stationery brand featuring her own illustrations. Gabriela writes dark and twisty fantasy stories set in places that remind her of home, so in her mind she is never too far from the beaches and mountains of Venezuela. Interviewing Gabriela will be Shirley Yanis, a Guatemalan, New York content creator, co-host of Giget's Chat, a book and movie review channel on YouTube. Shirley and her sister Christy enjoy reading books, manga, watching movies, anime, and singing their hearts out at karaoke. They were a producer for the Latino Film Market Film Festival. They love supporting independent content creators, authors, and film projects. Take it away, Comadre Shirley.
Thank you, Comadre Karen. I almost forgot where the mute button was at.
It's having that problem too. Hi, Gabriela. Can I call you Gabby or
Yes,
Gabriela?
yes.
Oh,
You can call me
okay,
Gabby.
cool, cool. And I was trying to look for you. I was like, where are you at? Your box wasn't popping up. So I was like, okay. No, nice for letting us interview you tonight to talk about your book. The
Thank you
Sun
for
and
inviting me.
Void. I don't know if the my blur thing is not good, but
It's
yeah.
okay. I have it here. So.
Is it good? Okay, yeah. I didn't want to show my background, so that's better. No, so yes, let's get it started. Can you give us a brief synopsis of the book for those who haven't like picked it up yet or read it, anything like that?
Sure. The Sun and the Void is a dark epic fantasy for fans of Final Fantasy and Game of Thrones. And it's set in a world inspired by post-colonial Venezuela about a young woman, Reina, who becomes indebted to her sorcerer's grandmother after her grandmother saves her life. To please her grandmother and the family her grandmother serves, Reina follows the legend of a dark, cruel god.
Okay, great, great. And that goes into my next question. So the Sun and Void is a dark fantasy. And so it has very like morally gray woman characters, which I thought was like dope and stuff. And it's like sapphic yearning and love. And I was like, that's amazing too. And but what I got from it the most, aside from that, was like about like colonization, you know, ancient magic, like Latinx folklore, which I love, and I think that's why they probably picked me to interview you, because I told them I love that. And so yeah, it's just that colonization and all that stuff of like an acceptance, and how these two characters, Reina and Eva, they want to be accepted. So can you talk about what the process was of like masterfully blending these like captivating elements in your story?
Yeah. So the themes of colonization and the conflicts of racial and class prejudice, they came about naturally from the world building, because I wanted to create a secondary world inspired post-colonial Venezuela. And, you know, Venezuela is a country that is born out of colonization, you know, that is a big part of our history and the blending of different races and cultures. So I created this world to have kind of similar analogy where we have like a group that's colonizing other groups, and the story is set shortly after their liberation. So there's still a lot of threads of prejudice that exist in the world, even though they achieved independence and there's freedom, and like the people that are building the land, you know, they abolish slavery and they want a free, you know, equality for all. But the old beliefs that they had from their ancestors are carried over. So there's different classes and different species in the Sun of the Void, and they engage with the world differently, you know, based on their history and with colonization. So I wanted to have my main characters to kind of share my background, and that's why I made them mixed race. So then I put them in this world, and as I was, you know, as their story developed, that's how the themes came about, of them feeling like they don't belong initially, and then going in that path to find acceptance and to find like to come into their true selves, you know, and accept who they are, regardless of what the society around them has expected of them.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I love about it was the fact that like genres like this is dark fantasy, but any genre like horror or fantasy, science fiction, you could always bring those elements of real world into them and have a social commentary with those genres. And I think that's what's really amazing about them. So thank you for that. So of course you're Venezuelan, and I wanted to know, because I'm half Guatemalan, half Puerto Rican. So I wanted to know like what inspiration from Venezuelan folklore like or mythology you use for like the world building in your story?
There's so much, honestly. I wanted there to be heroes of the revolution. So I have, Simone is a direct, the inspiration for Simone is Simon Bolivar, who is the liberator of, Gran Colombia and northern South America. And so Simone is like, he's inspired. He's not like one-to-one. I took my own creative liberties in how I presented him.
Mm-hmm.
But so he is inspired by Simon Bolivar, and then I have the that sense of, I wanted to create a world that had a sense of danger. So I introduced the tinieblas, and the tinieblas came about from like in música llanera. This is a genre of music of the llanos of Venezuela and Colombia. There's this like motif of different animals and like the devil and like darkness in the wilderness. So I try to utilize that as an inspiration for creating my tinieblas. They're amalgamation of different animals, and they exist in the darkness of the wilderness. There's also a lot of the music that is, the music and the food that I used in my world building goes into that as well. I was inspired by a god of Timotocuican beliefs, which are like the indigenous people of the Andes area of Merida and Trujillo. And they have a god of harvest, which can also be interpreted as a god of the sun. And his name is Chest. And that was the inspiration for Chest, the god of the sun, in The Son of the Void. Yeah. There's just like so much. I would have to like pull up my world building document. I just like, creating this world, there were so many things that I had to consider. Oh yeah, and the Pentimiento Church is obviously inspired by Catholicism and the way it's shaped the colony and the country post as it is a post-colonial setting. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of folklore and mythology, and to pick from is that must be like kind of like how can you like break it down to like you just pick and choose, right? To be like, okay, this will fit in my world building and stuff.
And additionally, I don't want it to be just a direct translation. So right. I took a lot of creative liberties to mismatch things and also change things.
Right.
For example, there is a legend of how a river was named in The Son of the Void, Rio Marle, and the river was named so because Princess Marle discovered it astride the jaguar who raised her, and that's inspired by some myths that we have in Venezuela, but it's not the myth itself, So whenever I was creating the lore for my world, I kind of took that sense, like that surreal sense of some of the myths that exist, and I tried to use that as inspiration to create my own for this world.
Oh, okay. That's great. That's actually amazing. So Reina and Eva are like am I saying her name right?
Yes. Reina
okay,
and Eva,
great.
yes.
Look, there's a couple of words, species and stuff. So if I mess it up, please correct me. I'm so sorry if I mess them up. But they're the protagonists, and they are both, they're both young women, and they're both seen different in their societies because, as you said, they're like half breeds between humans and creatures. Reina is Nozariel. Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. And Eva is Valco. Thank you. And they're just like, of course, society, colonization, how marginalized people are treated and look differently and are oppressed in so many different ways, of course. And so they are looked at differently, and they just are desperate to belong, and so, but they're both like, for me, they were both very tough
and very cutting and stuff, very like ambiguous, like more ambiguous. But they were also very vulnerable. So in your portrayal of these characters, what specific like complexities did you wish to highlight?
I guess for Reina is her desperation to fit into the Aguilas and to have a family, because she's been denied a family all her life, and she finally has this opportunity with this great sorceress who's feared and may not be like loved, but like people do what the sorceress says, or like they respect her because they fear her. So Reina sees that, and as she's someone who's grown up without that respect and without family support, and she finally has it within her grasp, and so she will do anything to belong and to have her grandmother's acceptance. And additionally to that, you know, she finds Celeste and falls in love with her. It's basically like the first person that showed her kindness almost.
Yeah. Basically, that was what happened. She was bringing her food and stuff. Sorry, spoiler. But yeah.
So she finds Celeste, and so now she also has the additional motivation of keeping Celeste happy at all costs, and you know how it's tied with her mother Laurel and her father Enrique. And so for Reina is like, she is not looking out to be a good person. She's just looking out to do whatever it takes to fit into the family. But she is a good person. She has moments when she acts like against her, you know, what would be the logical thing. Like, for example, she tries to save apartaderos from a whistler attack because she fears for the safety of the people. And it's something that goes, you know, that she could easily not do that, right? But she also despises tinieblas, and she wants to, you know, be able to save people whenever there's a tiniebla or a whistler that is threatening like people that don't have her skills. So I wouldn't say that she's just like a villain all the way. She still has some semblances of like wants to do the right thing, but also will look the other way if that's what it takes to get, you know, the thing that she wants the most, which is like to belong in this family.
Yeah.
And for Eva, I wanted her to like come to her power from like a place where she's not allowed to display it, and to just kind of like blossom into this powerful star of power that she is. And I thought that I always like the trope of like the hidden princess or hidden prince, or like you finding out like you have a secret lineage and you're like the heir of this country or whatever. And so I played around with that trope with Eva, and you know, she came into her power and she came into like a great fortune because, you know, she found out like she found out her family truth. Are we allowed to speak what happens here? Or is
spoiler alert and stuff. I don't know actually. But no, yeah, they're, like I said, they're very like, you know, they're just doing things out of wanting to be accepted, like you were saying. And you know, it's sad with Eva, like they're like trying to like basically force her to marry someone and stuff like that. Sorry, spoiler. But you know,
yeah, she has so much power and potential and skill, and because of the societal conventions of where she is, she has to smother it, and that drives her insane. She can't smother it. She can't contain this power that she has, and eventually gets to a point where she has to actually leave, like act, and she makes like really I would say like harsh decisions, you know, like she makes a choice she puts her in potentially like a worse situation Yeah.
um, yeah, no, they're amazing characters. And they're both, women, so that's dope. But yeah, let's get into the next question. There's a lot of like political and religious aspects of in the story that was very intriguing to me. So the continent follows like three like main figures in a sense, I guess, or religious figures. The lady who is like the new religion that's taken over, and Chet, like you were saying, which was like the previous god who's now only worshipped in certain areas. And then there's Ramagut.
Yes, Ramagut.
Okay, thank you. Who's like the version of like the devil and stuff. And Chet's like the sun, and then Ramagut's like the void. I don't know if that's a spoiler too, but you know what I mean. But yeah, it's like the devil, and they play, especially those two play a very important part in the story. So what role do these religious figures overall in the themes and message play in your story, if you wanted to talk about that as well?
Yeah, so Ramagut is viewed as the devil because that's kind of how the Pentimiento, the worshippers of the Virgin, how they are kind of like demonizing him. And yes, his lore is dark, but and there's going to be more about this in the next book about, you will actually read more about Ramagut's history, but he I would argue that he's also morally gray whenever he was present. But the way he's depicted in the story currently is through the lens of what this religion that's taking over the land, the Pentimiento Church, is painting him as. And this is a monotheistic religion where only the Virgin is allowed to be worshipped, and any other god, Ramagut or Chess, or any of the other old forgotten gods, they are demonized or erased. And this plays into the themes and realities of colonization that are prevalent in Venezuela and South America. Catholicism is a majority religion, and there's a lot of ancient beliefs from the indigenous populations, and they have all the different beliefs and groups. They have their own gods and spirits, and Catholicism demonized a lot of these. And so that's kind of how the themes of colonization were working into the world building. And I wasn't like setting out to make it a commentary on colonization, but I was trying to make it analogous to how Venezuela and South America is. This is a secondary world. So I was trying to make it, draw certain parallels. Yeah. Okay. And and then you have other beliefs like Saint John the Baptist, who is just like how it is with Catholicism. Some beliefs and parties that try to dress up a former, native deity or spirit into be like a Catholic saint. Similarly, yeah.
Right. Okay. Actually, there's a question in the chat. What was your process in writing this novel?
The process, well, I came up with the personal stakes first. So like when I wrote the book, I was more concerned about getting Reina's placement into the Aguila family and her relationship with Celeste. I wanted to write a fantasy story, but that tackled Reina's unrequited love. And so I was focused more on the characters initially, and that's usually my process. And I wrote Eva's and how she like ties to the Aguila family and her backstory with her father. her unknown,
Yeah.
her unknown secrets. And then I build the world. I kept layering the world. So it was a long process. And I have like a lot of reference documents, so there's a lot that went into it.
Yeah, I can't imagine, because it's like world building alone, and then having to use like real people, or like again, like mythology or anything like that, and putting it into that process must have took
But
a good while.
the world building didn't feel like that difficult to do, because I grew up in Venezuela, so
Right.
I was just taking stuff that I'm super familiar with, and just like, where do you grow up, Shirley?
Oh, here, the Lower East Side in New York City. So
yeah, New York City. So like, try to imagine that you're writing a secondary world fantasy story of New York City. Like, the stories of your city well, and for you it's easy to like translate it into a secondary world,
Right. Yeah. No, you're right. Because you could see where my community and stuff like that, and then just make it like a fantasy or horror or something like that.
Yes.
Build that world building. Oh yeah. You actually give me ideas to start my writing process. To write a book. I'm like, hold on. We actually have another question. How long did it take to write the book?
I wrote the initial draft in 2016 in about 3 to 4 months. But it took many years to edit it to what it is now. And officially, book was sent to production in late 2022. So you can count this whole time as writing time. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Last question. Do you have any writing workshops?
No.
And now you know.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that was the last question. Thank you so much. And yeah, everybody check out The Sun and the Void. Oh God, it still doesn't look good.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank
Check
you.
out The Sun and the Void.
Yes,
There is a
thank
map.
you.
There's an illustrated map inside. I'm
Yes,
also an illustrator, by the way.
that.
So I illustrated the map.
You
and
did it? Oh,
yes.
that's
And there's
amazing.
also character portraits that I illustrated. So you can see the main characters. That's Eva.
Yeah.
And I have here in part 2 the other characters. Sorry. Yeah. Javier. He's a Valco, so you can see his antlers.
Yeah. Antlers are huge.
And Celeste. So, and Mayor. So there's treasures within the book, and I have a glossary and like a whole major families have been listed out, so there's a lot of stuff in there. Check it out.
I love the map. I always love maps and fantasy.
Me too.
Yeah,
I love fantasy maps.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Gracias, comadres. Our second interview is with author John Manuel Arias. He is a queer Costa Rican American poet and writer, featured by Publishers Weekly as a writer to watch. John is a Canto Mundo Fellow and alumnus of the Tin House Summer Writers Workshop. Where There Was Fire is his debut novel. Interviewing John will be Tanya Soleil, a multilingual, multicultural serial entrepreneur. She is currently co-founder and CEO of Blue Desol, based out of California. Tanya joined Las Comadres during the COVID pandemic, participating in the Zoom Crochet Club and having led an online gingerbread house decorating session. Tanya is also a voracious reader. Comadre Tanya, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Hi, John. Welcome to our group interview. I know that protocol usually calls for us starting with your book, but I'm a logical personality, and for me, I have to understand the writer first to get to the book. So if you don't mind, if you could kind of tell us where you were born and, growing up. Bring us to today, if you wish. Give us a bit of background.
Sure. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you to all the comadres for coming here, for inviting me. I'm super excited. Now I'm trying to think of the many lives that I have lived, but I guess I started born and raised in DC to a Costa Rican father and a Uruguayan mother. So was raised there. My first few years was raised with my grandparents, but of course that means with my grandmother. Moved to New York when I was 18 to go to school here in New York City, where I reside right now. I'm in Brooklyn. Went to Costa Rica for 4 years after college to quote unquote finish my novel. And then back to DC and now back to New York after a couple of years. So I guess that's a little abridged version of my life.
That's great. So your book talks a lot about your grandmother, and I did hear you mention your mother. So tell us a little bit about your Costa Rican mother.
So my father is actually my father's side is the Costa Rican side.
Oh,
My
sorry.
mother's side, yeah, no worries. My mother's from Uruguay, but she left during the dictatorship in the 80s. So she sort of left it all behind, and she doesn't talk about Uruguay a lot. She's never gone back. And so the way that I accessed, my Latinidad really and my maternal lineage was through my father's mother, and I still talk to her. She's actually coming to the States tomorrow for a week to sign something. I have no idea what they have this poor 92-year-old woman doing, but it is something important in DC. So
Tell us a little bit about the Costa Rican side, since you picked Costa Rica as the background to your book.
yeah, so my father always kept us very connected to Costa Rica, right? And I always felt very connected to my grandmother particularly. So we would go back every year, every other year for the summer. So I never really lost that connection. And so when I started writing, when I was inspired to write, I was inspired by my family stories. I was inspired by the history of Costa Rica that I was learning. And I don't know, it felt right.
So, full disclosure, the reason I was selected to interview you was because my father worked for Chiquita. And so we went through all the bananeras, both in Honduras and in Costa Rica. So I was a little familiar with the bananeras topic. And as I told Maria, as I read your book, the only question was where the bombs were, as I put it to myself.
Right.
Where were the issues? So just, to touch it briefly, because you have it in your biography, is there anything you'd say about growing up gay in the US, or how it was accepted by your Costa Rican family?
So queerness and being gay and being queer inspires all of my type of writing, right? So when you're queer, it's not only, let's say, like a same-sex quote unquote type of relationship, but it's also the holistic understanding that queerness is feminism, queerness is attacking different or looking at different systems of power and trying to dismantle them, right? So, growing up queer taught me to see the different systems and I guess how to create community with people and attempting to dismantle them, right? So queer people keep within community, queer men, quote unquote, keep with women, right? Because patriarchy is right on top of all of us, right? And so hopefully we're all trying to work towards that common goal, which queerness is dismantling. That's what I think.
And so, what was the impetus for becoming a writer and writing a book?
So I was actually really, really, really bad at school. I graduated high school with a 2.2. It was kind of a miracle. I got into college actually. But I was 18 and we were on a summer trip to Costa Rica. It was right before college, and we were staying at this volcano lodge. So it's like an observatory. There's an active volcano, Arenal, if you've been to Costa Rica. And I wake up one morning and I go to this book swap, and I, of course, do not have a book to swap, but I see this very gorgeous turquoise cover, and I pull it out, and it's a novel set in the 80s about a quote unquote ugly Jamaican fisherman who gets lost at sea. And it's this sort of beautiful, harrowing journey. It tackles neocolonialism in Jamaica, and I finished it in 3 days, and I said, this is what I want to do. I want to make people feel this way. Yeah, and only because I like the color turquoise.
And that's why you have turquoise behind you now. But so what would you say, summarize the book for us without any spoilers? I mean, yes, I've read it, but the point is for others to pick it up and read it.
Sure. So Where There Was Fire concerns, it starts in the 1960s with this very sinister American fruit company. And so they're in the midst of a massive cover-up, and one night its most lucrative banana plantation burns to the ground. And so with that burning plantation goes the future of the lives of a family of Costa Rican women. And so 30 years later, we have the surviving matriarch and her still living daughter, and they are estranged. They both want to solve the mystery of that night, but they're unable to talk to each other. Then there's a freak hurricane, and they're forced to reconnect in order to rebuild and to build a future together.
And so we had a couple of questions, and then I'll get to mine from I think it was the Denver Comadres group that was very interested in a lot of the symbolism. And so, like, for example, the tail of the man, what was the symbolism there?
The tale of the saints are just devils who cut off their tails, and men are the devils.
Right.
So my grandmother is full of proverbs. She speaks in proverbs. She speaks in these really incredible, I don't know, they're kind of like ancient taglines. It's really fun. So this is not a Costa Rican saying, but it came to me. And I wanted to explore the way that Teresa the matriarch, her grandmother, came up with this philosophy that men are devils and women are saints, and women are sort of put in charge to chop off men's tails and to sort of sanctify them, right? And where this type of internalized misogyny is coming from. She's born in the 1800s, and so how does that color her relationship with her own granddaughter and with the way that she deals with men and patriarchy and machismo in Costa Rica?
Interesting. And what about the frog and I mean, I know they meant certain things for me, but since the Denver group was interested in, and then I'll, kind of comment on what it meant to me, but go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Denver, for shouting out the toad. I actually have a little toad right here. There is a species of toad in Costa Rica, which is like the biggest in the world. It's called the cane toad. And when it croaks, it sounds like the devil. It is very, very scary to listen to at night. And the cane toad is also, it's poisonous to humans, and it's called a cane toad because it stalks cane fields, right? And it eats pests. The book Where There Was Fire, the sort of blood of the book is a pesticide that the banana company is using called nemagon. And so this pesticide is helping the fruit thrive, but it is poisonous to men. And so I thought, what is the connection between this poisonous animal that protects plantations and crops and this sort of pesticide? And I decided to have one represent the other in order to get my characters to sort of see exactly what was actually going on behind their backs, under their noses.
Interesting. Well, I'm also, lived for a period in Puerto Rico, and there's the coquí. That's the very opposite, a small frog, but has been taken to a whole bunch of countries as a curio by tourists and is now an invasive species. So I actually saw the frog as this invasive species kind of a thing. So it's kind of interesting that you come at it from the big frog, but okay. So let me get at, what touched me the most. And for those who were on in the pre-meet, I'm the grandmother. That was my granddaughter that sat with me for a second. But,
Oh.
I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. So the bottom line is page 69 of the book. You have a quote on mothers and grandmothers. Yes, hold the book up. Show them what it is.
This is the book, and now I got to check page 69.
Well, I'll read it for you. So, quote, this is a direct quote. Mothers like Teresa hope above all else that they'll be graded on a curve. It was not so bad as, they want to say, at least I. But that isn't the case and has never been the case. Even if a mother does her best, her children will reproach her for some reason or another. They'll judge and rebel and kick and punch and insult everything she did or didn't do. They'll act like children even if they're adults. But then there are always another chance with the next generation, another shot to do it right. And end of quote, I should say. And in retrospect, I should have had you read it. You probably would have had better intonation for whatever.
No, you did a wonderful, that came from your heart. It was a beautiful
Well,
reading.
I thought it was very touching, and I wondered where that all came from.
When I lived with my grandmother in Costa Rica, I also lived with my 3 great aunts, and my aunt, who is my grandmother's daughter, and another woman. So I lived with hundreds and hundreds of years of women, which was really, it was really lovely, but also to watch these dynamics and to talk to my aunt, particularly. She's in her 50s. Maybe she's almost 60. Don't tell her I said anything close to that, please.
We won't.
But to watch her interact with my grandmother, and I as a grandchild, I think a lot of us really deify our grandparents. We put them on a pedestal because they treat us really kindly, right? Or they spoil us. And so a large part of my life was to deify and to put on a pedestal my grandmother. But the more that the older that I grew and the more that I understood about her life, the more that I had to take her down off of that pedestal, but that just made her more human, right? And my aunt was sort of instrumental in watching a mother-daughter dynamic play out between a 50-something-year-old and an 80-something-year-old. And she herself is also a mother. So these small little philosophies of, she's saying that she's reproaching her mother for something, but also she knows her children are going to reproach her for something that she did, was really, really, it was eye-opening, and it was also really heart-wrenching, right, to listen to. And I knew my characters were feeling the same thing. And
so again, I'll, say this comes from the Denver group. They're wondering how much is autobiographical in the book.
So I stay away from autobiographical things because I don't have the therapy to back it up in order to uncover a lot of those things. But there is a lot of family history. So there are a lot of people sort of plucked out from reality and placed right into this book. So the family history aspect is alive and well. And of course, Gabby will tell you, we as writers, we show up probably in all of our characters, if only like a little detail or another. So there's definitely lots of me in the book, but there are also a lot of other people who I knew and loved in life.
And so like Gabi mentioned, she's working on part 2. Are you working, if not necessarily on part 2, on a book? What's coming next from you?
Sure. I have a second novel and I have a third novel that has not been written. But my second novel, actually my 2 next novels are very different from this one. They are both set in Costa Rica, but they concern the second concerns straight men, and the third concerns a queer Costa Rican 18-year-old who is roped into a JFK assassination plot. But that is neither here nor there.
Which actually goes to one of the questions in the chat. What about your queerness in Costa Rican culture? That's exactly it.
Yeah. So I moved to Costa Rica in 2014, 2013, and I lived there until 2017. It was hard. It was hard being queer. I mean, it's a lot easier than a lot of other places. There are plenty of gay bars and queer bars. There is an underground, really strong culture. But on the street, it was kind of hellish. As in most places in the world, everyone is incredibly homophobic, and it's usually straight men driving by. They're the most homophobic. So
Moved
it
to
was
San Francisco. So I'm literally in the San Francisco Bay Area, and whatever. No comment. Meaning,
I like living
it's
in New York, actually. I love living in New York City. I do feel very safe and open with my queerness.
wonderful, wonderful. So if there's any questions from the audience that they'd like to do, yes, there's a comment that even San Francisco has its issues. Yes, it's true. But as John is saying, in comparison to the likes of Costa Rica, um, I think that we're doing quite well in the US. Unfortunately, the situation is changing, but we shall see. So another question that we have is, what did your auntie think of the book? What has your family thought of the book?
Yeah, so Tia Mimi, she liked it. What's funny happening in this book is that there are two sisters, right? There is the older and there is a younger, and it's not much of a spoiler for those who haven't read because it's 10 pages in. Unfortunately, the younger has committed suicide some time ago. And I have two aunts, and so Tia Mimi read this, and she goes, "Okay, so I'm Lyra, and your other aunt is Carmen, right?" And then my sister was like, "I'm Lyra, and you're Carmen, right?" And I'm like, "What are you telling me? Why are you bringing this up?" So there's been a lot of people are seeing themselves a lot in the book, and some of them are not really in the book. But I guess it's good writing, right? That they see
Identify.
they identify exactly.
Right. Which kind of goes to the point of the question of slight autobiographical elements, maybe if not the full story. And the other comment I would say is, I struggled to read it, quite honestly.
Yeah.
But as I told the group, I generally read nonfiction. I don't read fiction. However, within the context of that, what I would say was what I felt it was kind of a mix of like Cien Años de Soledad with telenovelas that I watched with my grandmother. So it was that kind of crazy telenovela surprise. It's coming, something's gonna go wrong.
Yeah.
But the other piece that I sort of struggled with was to what Gabby said, that in her book she had like maps and family. I was like, at times I lost track of some of the characters, which is Cien Años de Soledad for me. I lost track of those characters left, right, and center. But and so it might be intentional on your part, but I wonder, and I know given some of the surprises in the book, put it that way, you may not want to have like family tree at the beginning to help people identify characters as they progress. But I think for some people, and again, for some people, all that jumping around is exciting.
Yeah.
But that was my feeling. And how much did telenovelas inspire you in a sense?
I mean, I am a fan of Mariela del Barrio. I will always love Soraya Montenegro is the best villain I have ever seen on a screen. She's iconic. So telenovelas are big. The melodrama is also very big. And I also love Almodóvar. So my film agent said that my book read like a Latin American Pachinko meets Volver. And I said, this is the greatest compliment I've ever gotten in my entire life.
So how long did it take you to write it?
Oh my God, it took me forever. Gabby, you said it took you 3 to 4 months. My jaw dropped. You will see on the recording on YouTube, you will see my jaw drop. It took me, so the first words came out in 2009. And my book went into production earlier this year. So it took me about 13 years, about 14 years. It was a little bit of time, and hopefully my next book does not take so much time.
And so I'm curious, given the jumping around nature and the timelines, which kind of frustrated me, how much that was an internal decision on your part, or was it some of the editors that you credit? How much of the organization of the surprises and the timeline crisscross, how much did that come from you or from your editors? Or
Yeah, actually, you can quote, you can tell my publisher and my editor, they tried to scale it back. Actually, they tried to put things in chronology, right? I personally don't believe in chronological time. And I don't think that, or I think culturally Latin Americans don't really believe in chronological time. And it also comes in the way that we tell stories, the way that my family tells stories, and the way that I tell stories. You begin somewhere and then you jump into a tangent, right? And then you go back in time and then you go forward and you go into this person's narrative. And you never really get a story all the way through and at the same time. You go back to that person for different parts of the story. And then you add your own parts of the story. And eventually you get sort of like this hopeful understanding of what happened. So that's kind of what the book does. It's that it doesn't believe in the linear time, so it's jumping from different perspectives and it's jumping from different time periods because as a reader, we all, or, you know, I guess as a writer, I always want the reader to remember that there is a focus point, right? There is the tragedy, right, of the fire that happened, but also the emotional nucleus, the heart of this mother and her daughter, right? And so I tried to make and Gabby will tell you too, it's like when we have, I guess, different things that we want to do, our greatest tool is the narrator. And so the narrator came in a lot to lead the reader along the way, to sort of like convince you and to hold you and to empathize with you. And it's like, I know you're very frustrated. However, we're going to find out this new thing and I promise it's going to get good. Look at this pretty line. You know what I mean? So I tried my best to lead the reader in the way that I think was the most rewarding to find out what happened, and also to sit alongside the characters too, because the characters weren't hearing the stories all the way through and in a straight line. They were piecing together alongside the reader.
well, so the comment I'll make, having heard what you just said, was the other thought that occurred to me as I, got to pretty much the end was, I don't know if you've read Lawrence Durrell. He's a author from like about 80 years ago, and he had a trilogy. He's passed away, and the trilogy is basically the same story, but 3 points of view.
Oh.
And so it kind of made me think of that at times where, yes, there's a narrator, but it could have been done. I always thought what Lawrence Durrell did was really beautiful because it kind of threaded, it was almost like a braid of a story, where you're seeing it from point A and then point B and point C, the same exact storyline. And so it's, just something to kind of consider. And that wasn't quite phrased as a question, but I've been told I need to wrap it up. So if there's any last comment you'd like to give our audience, I'll leave the last word to you.
Oh, thank you. I saw a comment up earlier from Carolita, related to the Gabriel character, to rekindle the family memories. I'm really happy that you were touched. I also felt like Gabriel, and I know a lot of first-gen kids feel like Gabriel, where we feel cut off from these ancestors and we feel lost and we go searching and we go relighting these fires. And a huge part of this novel was me doing the same thing, was going back through my grandmother's stories and history and trying to piece together a lot of what I was missing too.
So thank you so much for sharing your background, your story. Show the book one more time so everybody can see it.
Bam.
There is fire. So go out and get it. I promise you a lot of surprises along the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Our thanks to authors Gabriela Romero Lacruz and John Manuel Arias. Wow, you have given us so much to think about. Thank you for writing these books and for sharing them with us. We also want to thank your publishers, Orbit and Flatiron Books, for their generous donation of books to our early registrants. And thank you as well to our interviewers, Comadres Shirley Yanes and Tanya Sullivan. We also want to thank you, our audience, for taking the time to join us tonight. And to those that submitted questions, we'd like to thank all our volunteers without whom this book club and all the associated work would not happen. Thank you so much, volunteers. Also, please remember to support our authors by writing a review of their books on sites like Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, etc. These reviews carry weight with the publishers as well as with other readers. And if you're not quite sure how to do that, on our latinolit.com website, there are some examples and some suggestions for how you can get started. Buy books to support our authors. And if your library does not have a book you want to read, we'll ask them to order it. And also, please attend your virtual local book club meetings and bring a friend or two. Remember, our book club is open to men and women, Latinos and non-Latinos. All are welcome. Our December books are The Haunting of Alejandra by V. Castro, Plantations and Our Becoming, poems by Melania Luisa Marte. And again, thanks to all of you for your continued support of our book club and Latino literature. And join us in celebrating Las Comadres National Latino Book Club throughout the year by buying books and supporting Latino authors. Good night, and always read Latino